My name is William A. Trim. I am a tour guide. I am a trainer of tour guides, as well as I have been the manager of this site for 7 years or more, given that I've worked as an assistant conservator of forests, subsequently a director of forests in Trinidad and Tobago, and even further to that, chief conservator of forests and chief game warden. We are privileged to be in the Main Ridge Rainforest Reserve. We are actually on the compound of the visitor center, which is behind us or in this direction. But let's show off, or let's talk about some of the features, intriguing features of this area. Well, the Main Ridge Rainforest Reserve is roughly 4,000 hectares in size. It means that roughly 13 to 15% of this land, this beautiful little island, Tobago, was set aside for what can be described as for the purposes of water and the fertility of the soil. And this was way back in 1776. How did that happen? Previous to 1776, we had a scientist, his name was Stevens. What he did, he studied these trees within this rainforest area, and he found there was a connection with the sap of the trees and the water cycle. The water cycle that some refer to as the hydrological cycle. Having found that, a parliamentarian was approached to help protect this area, whose name was Jennings, Soam Jennings. And what did he do? Jennings argued that it was essential to protect this upper part of the island, the ridge of the island, so that we can get water and that we can get fertile soil. And that was successfully done, some say in the legislative building of Tobago at that time. So much so that the area was declared in 1776 as a forest reserve. We now want to tell you also that if you look in this direction, there's a depiction there reminding us that this area has become part and parcel in 2020, part of or what we feature as the Man and the Biosphere under United Nations or UNESCO. And even so, nationally, this area was depicted a heritage site based on the input and the efforts of the Trust of Trinidad and Tobago, National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago, in 2018. Between 2003 and 2006, this area was listed globally, won an award referred to as the world's leading ecotourism site in 2003, 2004, 2005, and 2006. And it didn't just stop there. In 2007 and 2009, it won 2 awards for greening, Green Something Award. And what that means is that the Main Ridge Rainforest Reserve consists of about 13 to 15 or 16% of the land space of Tobago. And it has been kept green and it has been preserved in a sense as a virgin forest for 2.5 centuries. I want to now get down to some nitty-gritty, some fine-tuned details or features of this area. Within this Main Ridge Rainforest Reserve, G.S. Baird in 1944, when he looked at the Vegetation Association here, he said that this area has 3 types of rainforest. You have the lower montane rainforest, which is the highest which is found the highest elevation for rainforest. That is, I'm not going to tell you the trees that make that up, but we are within that right now. A little lower, you have the lowland rainforest, going towards Rocks Road, going to Bloody Bay. And even at a lower altitude, you have what you call xerophytic rainforest, What it means is that the less rainfall, the lower you go, and more rainfall, the higher you go. So welcome to the entrance of Gilpin Trail. We're particularly mentioning this because over the years, this has been the most prominent trail, perhaps the most used. Gilpin means a sharp cutlass because of the sharp turns of the road or the pathway. The pathway used to be a crown trace, and then it was developed to being a mule cat road, and subsequently it was widened and became a main road. It means then that villagers traveled on part of Gilpin from Lansamy to Roxborough, and from Bloody Bay to Roxborough by foot mainly long ago, and subsequently by donkeys, the privilege by horse, and some workers in terms of using mule for toting stuff or carrying stuff between communities. Well, let's do a few more features. If you look this way, let's talk about the lower montane rainforest. The uppermost layer of the forest is called pre-emergence or predominant, some persons would say, and that's the top uppermost level of the forest. All right, here indication of this area being a rainforest. If you look at all of the trees around here, they have moss and lichens on them. Some of them have orchids growing on them that we refer to as epiphytic plants. Some have ferns, like this palm tree. Most of these are ferns beside the moss. And coming back to what we mentioned before, this is one tributary of the many tributaries that form the Bloody Bay River. This tributary begins about 50-60 feet up that way. When several of these flow into a valley, they form a bigger stream, and eventually they can form a river, as you have in the case of Bloody Bay River. Now we could hear the water toppling over. The same tributary is joining another one. So two tributaries now to the Bloody Bay that would go all the way into the Bloody Bay River. Looking on this tree, here's an epiphytic plant called anare. It's growing up as a climber, and this plant is widely used in the Caribbean, not necessarily in Tobago or Trinidad, but in the Caribbean for making hats and other souvenir pieces when visitors go to their vegetative association or forest. And I want to point you to this one growing up along a tree called pensowood tree, Visma falcata, but it's really a climber. It's called Margraviae. The genus is Margraviae species with those green leaves. We understand in Costa Rica they're using the fruit of that for providing some medicines, or like back pain, they would use the fruit, squash it and place it over the area, and it does help against pain and a couple other things. But the critical thing is that the forest has medicinal plants. Given that we are within the rainforest, I need to talk about the two other levels. So right at ground level, this is the floor, ground floor, vegetation. There are seedlings, there are grass if sunlight come in, there are orchids and many other things. And these about my height, this is the understory. So we mentioned two before, and now we have two other levels or layers of the rainforest. This one being a lower montane forest. J.S. Beard says, two trees here characterize the lower montane rainforest. You have Brysonema coriaceae. This one is hard to pick up, but it's just above the palms. And the other one is wild cocoa. Most of the other plants lower down here are called wild cocoa. They're not in the cocoa family. They don't even bear fruit like cocoa, but the leaves look like cocoa, hence the reason. But what I bring to your interest here is that Snook et al. Says that the soil for this area is called Bloody Bay loamy clay. When the rain falls, you have leaching, within the clay, and when it oxidizes, it leaves the water with an orange color. And this is what gives two of the waterfalls or cascade further on their name, like Gold Silver River. Because of that orange color, we say it represents gold, and though water doesn't have color, we say it represents the silver color. On this embankment, this is one of the areas we do birding, because we have 4 species of bird that we make their nests in burrows here. What the locals will say they're rich bird, because they live in the embankment, but rather than saying embankment, they say they live in the bank. That's the outstanding Trinidad motmot, which is endemic for both islands. It goes in, make burrows, and goes in for about 2.5 to 3 feet and lay 1 or 2 eggs. We have the rufous tail jacama, smaller holes, cross section is circular. And then we have the great throated leaf tosser, and I'm leaving out one which is a green kingfisher. That reminds me to tell you that there are at least 43 species of bird that have been recorded within the Main Ridge Rainforest Reserve. That is about 1/6 of the total number of birds Tobago has. Initially 210, but now the figure is roughly up to about 269 or 70, and still counting. We do have some endemic plants in Tobago, and 16 of the 20 or 21 endemic species of plants of Tobago is found within this Main Ridge Rainforest Reserve. The area within here, based on studies done so far, there are at least 60 or so trees, species of trees. So here's a Clusia rosea. Here are some others over there, some behind me. Further up, it's not an endemic plant, but this is a plant we show off about. In terms of the tree, the Clusia, they look reddish, and when they open up, they're immaculate white, and they give off a very pungent aroma. So they use color and aroma for attracting the nectar-sucking agents. Here's a palm tree. This palm initially was called or misidentified to be Eutope tubagensis, meaning that it was endemic at the time. Subsequent study using DNA have shown that it's not Eutope tubagensis. It's now in a family called, or a genus called, Prestoria. So it's not endemic anymore. It played a very important role in terms of stabilizing soil, in terms of providing nectar for nectar-sucking agents, and in terms of aesthetics. So this plant on the ground here with the white flower, this is star grass. Some visitors are amazed that this plant used the white color for what? For attracting nectar-sucking agents, bees and wasps and so forth. Further to that, if you look on the ground, you could see some markings. This is indication of where batchak ants, parasol ants, atta ants have been using as their highway to carry leaf, flower, and fruits into their colony, which they chew upon and do their own gardening and use the fungus as food. Ladies and gentlemen, in collaboration with TTAL, it was my pleasure to share with you some of the intriguing features of the Main Ridge Rainforest Reserve, and we trust that you will tell others about it and come along and enjoy the interests, the features, the attractions here. And having come to an end, having mentioned highlights, I want to say Happy World Tourism Day.